Hey guys, what's going on? I woke up early today and no one else is awake, and I really don't have any work to do. I guess this is work, kind of. But I just had this idea during the last video I filmed, which was, I don't know, like an hour ago, maybe, for me, but probably days later for you. But anyway, I just had this idea of ranking the signs most to least predictable. And I don't know if this will be interesting for you guys. This is kind of an experiment. I wish there were more signs I could rank the compatibility of, but I've only got a couple left. And yeah, so we're going to have to do some other tier videos, put some other tier videos in the mix as well. And I did want to mention that, I don't know, usually the tiers go along the lines of like best to worst, sort of, with blue being the best and red being the worst. And I did want to make it abundantly clear. Anyone that comments, you'll be able to see if they actually listened to this part of the video, because I want to make it very clear that um, this isn't, being unpredictable isn't bad. I think there are different pros and cons to being very consistent and predictable versus inconsistent, more wild, more adventurous, more spontaneous. Like, everyone is different. And actually, to get a little deep for a second, we need that difference in humanity. We need certain people that are really adventurous and wild, and we need other people that are consistent and predictable. So this isn't bad to, good to bad necessarily. It's just, I don't know. This is just how I decided to rank it. I think it makes sense. Blue seems like a heavier, like cooler color. It seems more predictable. Red is more wild. I don't know. Yeah, okay. But let's get into this here. So, Aquarius is a challenge as usual. So Aquarius is a fixed sign. It's fixed air. So Aquarius will be generally they're very stable. They're very consistent, reliable. But you do have that Uranian influence here, where I would characterize Aquarius as being the energy of earthquakes. All right. So they will be stable for a very long time, and then just suddenly they'll shake everything up, and suddenly they'll move across the country, or start a relationship, start a new job, whatever, or they'll completely change their perspective on something overnight. So it depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking about for short-term predictability or consistency, then yeah, I would say this is one of the more predictable signs. But long-term, though, on a more long-term level, they could be one of the more wild, more unpredictable signs. So really, God, I gotta put them right in the middle then. This is one of those situations where they can be very much on either side. And of course, as always, it depends on, what does the rest of this hypothetical chart look like? Does the person involved have Sun in Aquarius? Because if there's a lot of Earth in their chart, then yeah, they're going to be super stable, predictable, consistent. If there's a lot of fire in their chart, obviously they're going to be more wild and unpredictable. But generally speaking, I'd say they're in the middle. Next is Aries. Aries is going to be the most wild, least predictable. I think this is actually what got me thinking of this particular video idea. It was from the Aries compatibility video, and it's because I was talking about how I think Aries would be one of the least predictable signs, most wild, most spontaneous, impulsive. That's their thing. That's the beauty as well as the downfall of Aries. They live in the moment, right? So yeah, pretty straightforward. I don't know what else to say. Aries is the first sign, so it's all about beginnings, right? It's all about initiating, and they'll initiate anything. They're constantly in a phase of initiation. Next is Cancer. So I would say, I'm going to have to say consistent. I would say Cancer is one of the more complacent, kind of less physically active signs. Cancer wants stability. Cancer really values that stability, and Cancer tends to shy away from anything too wild or unpredictable. Cancer is one of the more conservative signs. That's another word that you could use here, like conservative, not politically, but when it comes to risk taking, I guess. So yeah, Cancer is more consistent. The only reason why I wouldn't rank Cancer as most predictable, Mr. Predictable or Mrs. Predictable, is that Cancer is so emotional, though. So I think with those emotions come, there can be many different oscillations and certain phases. The moon actually travels faster than any other, planet in the sky that we talk about in astrology. So Cancer can have like quick motion when it comes to feelings and things like that, and it can change on an emotional level. But again, that's kind of the only area that I would expect unpredictability with Cancer. I think generally they would be pretty consistent. They kind of just go with what they feel, which is more, well, I was going to say more simplistic, but that can be complicated as well. But I do think they're one of the more predictable, consistent signs. I know I'm throwing out a lot of different words because I think that, these words are like roughly synonymous. They are close together. I guess it's a concept that I'm ranking. Next is Capricorn. So Capricorn is about as predictable as it gets. I would say they're probably second most predictable, and I feel like the most predictable sign should be pretty obvious, but I guess you can stay tuned if you're not sure exactly what I'm thinking. But Capricorn, I would say is the second most predictable. They're an Earth sign, and they're constantly focused on the long term. So that's why Capricorn isn't one to make any bold or risky decisions. Generally speaking, they're not usually acting on their short-term interests. They're thinking about the long term. They're thinking about tomorrow, next week, next year, etc. So that makes them less predictable. That means that it's going to take them usually longer to change their course of action. Because they're having that more long-term perspective. What else? Capricorn's ruled by Saturn. It's Earth and it's ruled by Saturn. So you've got the heaviest element ruled by probably the heaviest planet, I guess you could say. Not literally, not physically, but Saturn's such a heavy energy. It's very grounding. It's almost too grounding. It can feel depressing sometimes. It's so much weight. But with that weight comes, that strong foundation and, predictability, consistency, etc. Not unpredictable, not spontaneous. Next is Gemini. So I'd say Gemini is also one of the least predictable signs. They're constantly in a state of motion. Gemini, like Aries, gets bored very easily. Okay, so Gemini is constantly trying out new phases. They're very experimental, and Gemini can't make up their minds. They really can't. They can see everything from so many different perspectives that they may think they feel very strongly about one thing, and then before you know it, they change their minds. I actually just did that yesterday. I have a lot of Gemini in my chart. I told my coworkers I was going to do one thing for the day, and then as soon as I left the office, I was like, you know what? Actually, I'm going to do something totally different. So that can be difficult for others to understand. It's not predictable. It's not consistent. Gemini does lack, in those areas. But they really excel when it comes to spontaneity, openness to change, adaptability. That makes them more wild, makes them more spontaneous, less predictable, etc. Next is Leo. So Leo is kind of interesting because Leo is fire, and I would say the fire element tends to be the least predictable, most spontaneous, most impulsive, most wild, whatever you want to call it. However, Leo is fixed fire. So of the three fire signs, Leo is probably the most predictable, if that makes sense. This is tough. I would say either unpredictable or neutral. It would look really beautiful to fill up that slot in unpredictable. I don't know. I may change that later if I think about it. See, that's what I'm saying. I'm Gemini. I'm constantly changing my mind. But Leo, yeah. I mean, I'm gonna say neutral. Because they are consistent. Like, yes. The fire element does tend to have more to do with initiation and beginnings, but then being fixed fire, yes, you are beginning things, but you're doing so in a constant and kind of consistent way, if that makes sense. So it is a little bit contradictory, but I do think this kind of balances out and makes Leo maybe the best of both worlds in this kind of sense. Like, yeah, they can be super eccentric and spontaneous, adventurous, wild, etc. But they also do want that kind of consistency. They can be very committed. They want to find something fun and just keep doing it. You know what I mean? That's what Leo is all about. So I think they end up being kind of in the middle. Next is Libra. So this is another interesting one because Libra is of the air element, which is generally very unpredictable, constantly changing. Libra is another sign that's constantly changing their minds. However, Libra is ruled by Venus, and so that's where Libra is really different from the rest of the air signs and really the rest of the yang signs in general. The yang signs as a whole are constantly focused on spontaneity and action, and Libra really isn't. Libra is almost an honorary yin sign or honorary feminine sign. Technically that's not correct, but being ruled by Venus, they do have a more conservative approach. Libra is one of the least risk-taking signs. They want to pick, the tried and true method. They want to go with the safe option. They want to go with the option that is safest, like socially as well. That's going to, make a good impact. Like Libra wants everyone to like them, which I think holds them back from more, radical decisions or movements. So I would say they are consistent. I wouldn't rank them as the most consistent because Libra can be fickle. They can change their minds. They are one of those signs that can see every angle to things. So that, in a way, on the one hand, yeah, that could make them unpredictable because they can go with any side. They can go with any aspect. Libra is also kind of easily influenced by other signs, other energies, so that can make them unpredictable as well. But on the other hand, having that bureaucratic mindset, seeing all this minutia, seeing all this information, this can give them kind of analysis paralysis. It can actually create a sort of consistency for them, especially considering that they are like averse to risk, if that makes sense. Okay, I've had something in my throat all morning. It's really annoying. Do you have any cures for that, by the way? Does anyone know, like, because I struggle with that sometimes. I'll get something stuck in my throat, so to speak, and I can't get it out. But maybe that goes with having a deep voice. I don't know. Next is Pisces. I think Pisces is the perfect sign to fill up this unpredictable slot. Well, they are pretty unpredictable though. Maybe this would be wild. Pisces is very unpredictable. They're ruled by Jupiter, so there's this element of expansion, and life is a journey. And so, Pisces is opposite Virgo. Virgo wants everything to be controlled. Pisces doesn't mind everything not being controlled. Pisces is very accepting, I think. So with that acceptance, Pisces is maybe the sign most capable of choosing the path of least resistance. So Pisces will just kind of go, whatever direction life will take them, sort of. That's the beauty, but also the downfall of Pisces. They are so adaptable, and again, having that Jupiterian focus, it means that Pisces views things optimistically. Maybe that's another factor here as well. Signs that are more optimistic, I think, are more likely to be spontaneous and to, any idea they think of, they go, oh, that's a great idea, let's do it. You know what I mean? So I do think more optimistic signs will tend to be toward the bottom. I'm going to put Gemini in the unpredictable category. Isn't that an unpredictable thing for me to do? Maybe not, though, because I talked about it a lot. But I do think Gemini... Real quick, going back to Gemini. So Gemini is a little bit similar to Libra, like I said. They do have a lot of similarities. I do think Gemini can have that analysis paralysis. They have that bureaucratic mind. So I will push them up a little bit there. But they are still generally unpredictable. But Pisces, again, they are more optimistic than Gemini. So they're just more willing and able to roll with whatever life throws them. They're also very emotional as well. So... kind of similar to Cancer, that emotion, I think emotion itself is sort of unpredictable, right? We don't really control that, I don't think. I guess now I'm trying to debate if we can control emotion or not. I guess we can. We'll talk about Scorpio later. But the difference between Pisces and Cancer is that Cancer really values stability, wants to build a home. Pisces wants adventure, so I think that's, even though those two signs are very similar and I usually rank them as such, I think in this context, they are actually very different. Next is Sagittarius. Sagittarius is also going to be one of the most wild signs. Sagittarius is almost kind of like a combination of Aries and Pisces, if you think about it. Sagittarius is fiery like Aries, but mutable like Pisces, and is also ruled by Jupiter like Pisces. So Sagittarius is not only like super adventurous, outgoing, really optimistic, impulsive, spontaneous. They are also, what was I gonna say? They're also like multifaceted as well, which in this case I think that makes them even more unpredictable. I'm gonna have to debate what is the most unpredictable sign. Aries, Pisces. I think Pisces and Sagittarius may be more unpredictable than Aries. I don't know. It's tough. I don't know, though. It depends on kind of how you look at it. Next is Scorpio. So this is kind of a tough one because Scorpio, on the one hand, Scorpio values consistency. It's a fixed sign. They're very stubborn, very strong-willed, and they can have an element of them where they can see things as black and white. They can be sort of extremists. But even that, being an extremist, that can make you extreme and unpredictable, but it can also make you, if you're having this more simplistic kind of black-white mentality, that can make you more predictable as well. Another thing with Scorpio is that they can be very private and secretive, which in turn would make them unpredictable, kind of concealing their motives, concealing their goals, they're concealing their feelings as well, which I touched on earlier. Scorpio is a sign that is very emotional, which can make them unpredictable, but they strive, I think, for control over their emotion. They keep it under wraps, almost kind of like an earth sign would. Earth signs, I feel like, are very emotional but keep it under wraps, but Scorpio is more emotional than an earth sign. It's also very fiery. Really weird, yeah. If you think about it, Scorpio, I mostly compare Scorpio to fire signs, but in a way, they have a lot in common with earth signs. Scorpio is the scorpion, which is a terrestrial animal, unlike the, crab or fish, like the other water signs. I guess Cancer's crab is halfway. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. Scorpio, this is tough. I'm thinking neutral, which is kind of interesting. Now I've piled 3 fixed signs there because, I don't know, there's a lot going for them being really consistent and kind of predictable, but they are notoriously unpredictable as well, though. So should I rank them as unpredictable? But they're a fixed sign. It's hard for me to put a fixed sign down in these bottom 2 tiers because Scorpio is one of the more consistent signs. So I'm going to put them in the middle. Next is Taurus. If you didn't guess it already, I would say Taurus is easily the most predictable, most consistent sign. The only one that potentially rivals Taurus for consistency or predictability, reliability, etc. would be Capricorn. The difference, though, is that Capricorn is cardinal earth, Taurus is fixed earth. Also, I think many people miss that Mars is exalted in Capricorn. So Capricorn does have this like undertone of unpredictability and volatility. It's just usually kept under wraps. Capricorn has this hidden kind of wild side. I'll come back to Taurus in a minute. I also believe that Uranus actually is in domicile in Capricorn in addition to Aquarius, which I know sounds super crazy and wild, but I have a whole domicile scheme. Maybe I will. I have a video on it. Let me know if you want me to link that video, and I will. But I invented like my own domicile scheme. But anyway, so Capricorn can be very unpredictable. It's just kind of reminiscent of Aquarius. They're generally very consistent, but if you get them on the right day or if you provoke them, they can be very radical and wild. That's very different from Taurus. Taurus is not only fixed earth, it's also ruled by Venus, which is, again, more of that feminine energy. I view, when it comes to like yin yang, masculine and feminine, I view the masculine energies as more disruptive and chaotic, and that's not in a bad way. None of this is bad or good. I just view the more masculine signs are more oriented toward change and initiation, if that makes sense. Whereas the feminine signs are more about, like, usually the masculine signs are more about initiation and the feminine signs are more about either stability or endings, kind of. So anyway, that's another tangent. But Taurus being ruled by, being more yin, more receptive, more feminine, it's more oriented towards stability. Everything about Taurus is about stability. If you want someone that's going to be stable and consistent and reliable, find someone with a lot of Taurus in their charts, I really think if there was a perfect sign, it would be Taurus. Maybe part of that is my own bias, but Taurus has that kind of blend of being very predictable, very responsible, down to earth. They've got those mundane parts of life covered, but they're also fun. They are ruled by Venus, so they are focused on pleasure, desire, attraction, etc. They like to have a good time. They like sensual activities and things like that. So that's another tangent. I'm sorry, I keep going on tangents today. I think it's because I'm excited about something else in my life. I'll tell you guys later if you want to know. But this is about as predictable as it gets. Taurus would be my clear number 1 for sure. And the next is Virgo. So obviously, the other 2 earth signs are at the very top. The most predictable earth signs do tend to be more routine oriented, very grounded, very practical, very slow to make change. Earth signs are constantly focused on change, but in a very gradual kind of way. Taurus is probably the most gradual. Capricorn's very gradual. Virgo wants constant change as well, but because Virgo is mutable, they're much more oriented toward change than their other earth sign peers. So Virgo is kind of in the middle. Yeah, it's kind of tough. I think Virgo, especially being a mutable sign, mutable signs are notorious for having a wide range. I think Virgo can be very predictable, very consistent, very reliable, especially depending on the chart. Being a mutable sign, Virgo will blend and kind of mold with whatever other signs or elements that you put it with. So it really depends on the chart here. Does this Virgo have a lot of like mutable signs or air or fire in their chart or even water? That would make them maybe less predictable. But if they've got more earth in their chart or certain water signs, maybe, then they'll be more. So it kind of just depends. Also, Virgo is one of those signs that, it is ruled by Mercury. Mercury is an unpredictable energy. Mercury retrogrades very often. It can travel very fast, but it can also travel very slow when it's, going in or out of retrograde. So as such, I do think the mercurial signs are more unpredictable. They are more oriented toward phases. They'll do this for a little while, and then they'll do that. They're constantly kind of spiraling and learning and changing. So I do think Virgo can be very unpredictable as well. And I've actually observed almost kind of what I was saying about Capricorn and Aquarius. Virgo may be very consistent for a very long time, constantly like gradually making these changes and adjusting and kind of perfecting their life. But once they do stagnate, like Virgo hates things being stagnant. And what's interesting is as perfectionistic as Virgo seems, Virgo is seeking perfection. They're seeking ultimate efficiency. But it's one of those things where if Virgo were to actually get that, they self-destruct. And I've observed that with I've known many different people with major Virgo placements. I've observed that with many people. Once their life gets kind of like almost, well, I wouldn't say perfect, but as good as it can get, and there's no more work to be done, they will self-destruct almost like just to give themselves something to do. I don't think we consciously do that. I think it's a more unconscious level. But Virgo needs change. As much as they may despise it, they need change. They need something to work on, something to improve, etc. So anyway, I could talk about that more, but there's a lot going for Virgo. There's a lot going against Virgo when it comes to predictability. I feel like a lot of people would want me to rank Virgo higher in consistency, but I'm very familiar with Virgo energy. I'm almost tempted to rank them as unpredictable. So I'm going to leave them in the middle. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed that little exercise. Hopefully you learned something or at least had fun hanging out with me for this 20-something minutes. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. As always, if you have any ideas of how to rank the signs, definitely let me know, or any other videos as well. I can do educational videos. I'm not super good technologically. If you can help me out there, I would so appreciate it. But yeah, thanks for watching. Hit me up for anything, any question. Hit me up for any readings. My information is always in the description. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.